Let's settle this right now. The word savage isn't an insult. At least, not how we're using it. It doesn't mean dumb or primitive or grunting in a cave. It just means not part of a structured, bureaucratic, passport-stamping civilization. Savages, in the best way, are people living outside formal systems. No government, no army, no taxes, no building permits. Just people doing their thing in the wild with style. And here's the fun twist. They're not clueless. In fact, they're often smarter than the rest of us. Because when you're living in the bush without Google or grocery stores, you either adapt or you're dinner. So if someone shows up with a camera and says, "Hey, I'm here to study you," most uncontacted groups have one answer: no thanks, please leave. Or get speared, reasonable boundaries. And honestly, I respect that because the moment you try to study them, they're no longer savages. They're participants in civilization. And the thing you wanted to observe just disappears. You might think, well, okay, we don't know much about the uncontacted tribes. But surely we've studied the contacted ones, right? Ah, sweet optimism. Let me crush that gently ... Even with the tribes we've known for decades, we still don't really know how they live. Why? Because the moment we show up with notebooks and cameras, everything changes. Imagine this. You're naked, living your best forager life in the jungle. Suddenly, a white guy shows up with a clipboard and sunscreen. Do you keep acting normal, or do you perform? Sometimes people start pretending to be more tribal than they really are. Other times, they hide parts of their culture. And often, they just go along with what they think the anthropologist wants to see. Science becomes theater ... Even worse, some tribes get reconstructed by outsiders. Missionaries, aid workers, TV crews, all trying to preserve culture by accidentally rewriting it. So when we think we're studying ancient customs, we're sometimes just watching a feedback loop. You might be imagining some isolated tribe in the heart of the Amazon, 10 days from the nearest road. But here's the thing. Some foraging peoples live right next to civilization, and we still barely know anything about them. Take the pygmies, for example. They often live near African farmers. They interact, they trade, they're literally neighbors. But guess which group gets studied, surveyed, and documented? Spoiler, not the pygmies. Why? Because they don't have centralized villages. They move around. They don't file paperwork or build temples. They don't fit into tidy categories, and science loves tidy categories. So they're ignored. Anthropologists might visit them, take a few notes, snap a photo of someone with a bow, and then focus on the real society across the river. Because spreadsheets prefer farmers. Meanwhile, the so-called savages continue living, thinking, inventing, adapting, quietly being one of the most complex human cultures around. While civilization looks the other way and says, meh, no data. Here's the tragic truth of anthropology. If you can observe a true savage, you're no longer looking at one, because the act of observation changes the subject. It's the Heisenberg principle, but with loincloths. You show up with your backpack and GoPro, and just by being there, you alter what you're trying to record. The tribe adjusts, they get curious, they perform. Maybe they get defensive.
If that
Maybe
is a
they
thing
try
where
to
they
impress
just kind of
you.
copy me based on
But either
what
way,
I'm learning,
the raw,
that's such a
untouched,
cool little thing to
natural
have.
behavior.
Look, they're all just
gone.
having a little drink.
And here's the kicker: if someone lets you observe them, they're already participating in a
Adult
social
female coupled with
exchange.
two.
That means they're no
Wait,
longer
what?
operating in their
Okay,
own
so
system. They're
she's called
operating
app.
in yours. So the only way to truly study an untouched culture is to not touch it, which means no interviews, no photos, no notes, no science. In other words, the perfect field study is the one you never did, which is deeply unsatisfying, but also kind of poetic. Here's the biggest myth of all, that hunter-gatherers are our past, that they're living fossils, that if we watch them long enough, We'll understand how we used to live, but that's not how it works. They're not stuck in time. They're not museum pieces. They're real people living in the same present as us, just with a very different operating system. They've made conscious choices about how to live, how to raise kids, how to interact with the land. And those choices are often smarter, more efficient, and way less stressful than anything modern life offers. So calling them primitive is just projection. They're not behind us. They're beside us. They're a parallel version of what it means to be human ... And the tragedy is, as we industrialize, globalize, and digitize, we're losing contact with that version forever, even as we start realizing how valuable it was. So yeah, call them savages if you want. But say it with respect, because the real savagery might be thinking we've already figured it all out.